You've never done ayahuasca before. You're about to do your first ayahuasca ceremony. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. Seriously, Sky? Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for you. And I am going to use this opportunity on this video this week because you're about to go in to give you my insight, my guidance, my story about doing ayahuasca. And first, I'm just going to start off with the tips because you're a busy woman and maybe you'll skip this whole video of my first ayahuasca story. But the tips for ayahuasca is keep your diet super clear, super clean beforehand. Just vegan diet if you can. Strictly fruits and vegetables if you can. And when you go into it, just expect nothing. Just realize that you're working with the real, like it's an actual spirit. You will meet them in person. In person, it can take you someplace so big, and your ticket to going further is your trust and knowing that you are safe and you're taken care of and that you're loved. And I promise you, Sky, you are absolutely loved. You are absolutely taken care of. You're going to be so blessed. And it may need to take you into some areas within yourself that are scary. But it will it's like on your side, and it'll stretch you and it'll like move back. And if it's too much, you can tell it to back off. But, but my advice is, sometimes when people do ayahuasca, they lay down. I think, with all the spiritual work you've done, just sit with your back straight the whole time. Just, sit as much as you can like a freaking Buddha meditator, with your back straight. That's gonna give you the best experience. And the biggest thing is just trust. You're gonna be okay. There's nothing to fear ever. There's nothing to fear. You're so blessed. You're so taken care of, and you don't have to go fast. You have all the time in the world, but just with your trust, trust God, trust the universe. I don't know what you see as your relationship to the highest power, but just trust it. I am going to just say prayers for you to trust, because I just don't want you to have any fear, because I believe in you so much that you're going to be able to go very far. And with that, I want to share with you the story of my first experience with ayahuasca. And it may be a long video, Sky, so I hope you watch it, because it's a big deal, dude. My experience is a pretty big deal. And you know what? I'm guided whenever I want to share things, to be honest. Whenever I think about sharing something, I really want to share it. When I see myself sharing it, I see myself putting a blindfold on. And so I might do that a little bit during this thing, at least to get started. I might take it off at some point. And you know what? Since this is like practicing my videos and stuff, and you're the person watching me, then I'm just going to do it. And you can tell me what you think. But yes, Sky, this is my story of my first ayahuasca ceremony. And I want to tell it so clear, and I don't want to look at the camera and get distracted by looking at myself. So I'm going to blindfold myself, and I'm going to tell you the story of my first ayahuasca ceremony, everything that happened, because it was the day that changed everything for the rest of my life. I have been obsessed with God my whole life, obsessed with the magic, obsessed with that. And I wasn't raised religious, but when I got out of high school, I decided, you know what? The only thing that matters in life is to find God, whatever that is. And I had a Bible in my house, so I was like, I got to become a Christian. And I found the most intense culty church I could ever find, and they were so serious and they were so controlling, but it's exactly what I needed. And I locked myself into this Christian cult called the International Churches of Christ at 18 years old, and I got so serious about it. And I read the Bible every day, and I prayed every day, and I had and because it was a Christian cult, like they have all these things that they do to keep you stuck in there. And I believe it or not, I'm grateful that they had those, because if this was not a Christian cult, if this was just a normal Christian church, I probably would have left. But because it was a Christian cult, I stayed there, and And I stayed there for a long time, and I got really into it. And I read the Bible every day, and I prayed every day. And I decided I wanted to go into the ministry, and I became a minister, and doing a lot of things that I was not really wanting to do, but I did it because, for God. Like, I was celibate. I was like not talking to girls, not dating. I wasn't very good at talking to girls in the first place, so that actually worked out really good for me. Until I wanted to. I actually left the church with the first girl I ever fell in love with. She was an amazing woman. After dating 2 years, we ended up having sex, and that's just the worst thing to do if you're in a Christian cult. But but then after doing that, I ended up leaving her and coming back to the church because I was so guilt-ridden and wanted to be close to God. And when I got back, I was like, if this is real, I'm going to this better be real, because I'm giving up the girl that I love for this religion, and it better be real. And so the Bible says, if you believe anything, and if you believe what you pray for has already happened, it'll come true. And so I said, okay, God, I'm going to start testing you with this in a little bit. And so I saw an ad for somebody. It was like, we're looking for somebody to be the host of this kids television show, and I was like, I want to be on television. And so I prayed for that. I was like, God, give me that job. That's what I have, that job. And I started going around and telling people that it was my job, and I already got it. And it was partially not true, but it was also just playing with manifestation before I knew manifestation exists. I was praying for something. I was telling people, this has already happened. I've already got the job. And the crazy thing that happened is I got the job. I also prayed during that time. I was like, why not pray for things, big things? I'm going to also pray that the founder of this entire Christian organization, this guy named Kip McKean, he started our whole, the ICOC church. I was like, I want to be his right-hand guy. This guy was like a celebrity, the biggest celebrity within our church. He was like, I don't know, like he was like the president, And he seemed so far off. It seemed impossible. The first time I ever saw him, he was speaking, I just saw his head. I was like, oh my God, I saw Kip's head. This guy was big, a big shot within this organization that was pretty large. It was worldwide, hundreds of thousands of people. And I was like, I want to be mentored by him. I want to be his right-hand person. And so I got the job on television. I was a kids club host for like 4 years. And then after that, I went into the ministry. And then the crazy thing happened was the whole church fell apart. It imploded. Like all this controversy came out, and Kip McKean, the founder of the church, ended up moving to my small little dinky town of Portland, Oregon, and I became his right-hand person. It was crazy. So I was experiencing some really big miracles and through my prayers, and but then once I got to that place, I was like, oh my God, like this is not really about God at all. This is just a business. This guy he was a really charismatic guy. He was a pretty cool guy, but I didn't really feel very connected to him. He was very into sports, and I was into sports. And I think he kind of looked at me and was like, what is this dude doing here as my right-hand person? And, I was kind of like, well, I guess because I prayed about it. But very quickly after 1 year, I was like, this is not what I want. And he was like, yeah, you don't belong here. And so I left the ministry and in a very depressed way, went and worked in corporate America, and life was very sad for a while. And so I just stayed in the church because that's what you do. But in around 2010, my dad got sick with brain cancer, and he passed away. And when he passed away, I kind of had this thing of like, oh my God, I only have one life. And I felt really old at the time. I felt like my life was already over, but I was like, you know what? I have one life. I'm not really enjoying this thing. I don't even know if I believe this anymore. I don't even know if I believe in God anymore, because after working in a cubicle for so long, you just lose your faith in humanity and faith in anything. It's like life sucks. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go try to have some fun with the rest of my life and enjoy it. And so I left. And as I left, I got to reconnect with my mom a lot. My mom was a really amazing woman. And early on in 2000, probably 5, right before I married a woman that I was totally not in love with, in the church, my mom was like, yeah, I want to tell you about this thing I just tried. It was called ayahuasca. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. And I looked up ayahuasca and I was like, oh my God, it's a psychedelic. And I thought, oh my gosh, my mom is on drugs. And I went and I brought the Bible to her and I was in tears and I read the Bible to her about how she's sinning. And my mom was just like, oh my God, okay. I'm sorry, Keon, I can't. Sorry you feel that way. And she never talked to me about it again. But after I left the church, I asked my mom and I said, Mom, what was that thing you talked about, ayahuasca? I'm interested in trying it. And she was like, oh, Keon, oh my gosh, this is my whole life. She's like, I do it all the time. It's like I do it. The shamans live with me. This is a huge part of my life. And I'm so happy that you want to try it. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely really wanting to try it. I was feeling called to go to Peru for some reason, called to be a shaman for some reason. I didn't know anything about ayahuasca. I didn't know what to expect from it, but my mom was so excited. And so I committed to doing an ayahuasca ceremony. At the time, I didn't really know if I believed in God or not. As I was leaving the church, I expected kind of like to be cursed. And instead, I started experiencing a lot of magic for the first time, like synchronicities, stuff I could never explain. And I was just like, what is going on? This feels really good. I felt like I was being carried in some way. But yet I didn't really know if I really believed in God or not. And as I got closer and closer, this was the summer of 2011. As I got closer and closer to the time of doing ayahuasca, like more and more magic was happening. It was just getting huge. Like I was feeling like I was about to go, something was going to happen that was so big that was going to change my life forever. And I had, a girlfriend at the time, and she was like really wanting me to commit. And I was just like, dude, I'm sorry. I cannot commit to anything right now. I need a clean slate, blank canvas, because something's about to happen. I don't know what, but I'm about to do this ayahuasca thing. And so I went to the ayahuasca retreat, and it was a 3-night retreat. And the first night, the shaman sat down with me and he said, here's the advice. He's like, you have a purge bucket. If you feel like purging, just purge. Try to keep your back straight. And, if you need help, just ask. And that was all the advice that they gave me. And the first night, I will say that on the way up to the ayahuasca retreat, my mom asked me to bring one of her friends up. She's like, can you give a ride to one of my friends? And I was like, sure. And so I went to go pick up her friend who had just arrived from, she was living in Malibu. And I was expecting a friend of my mom's, somebody my mom's age. But little did I know she was my age. And this woman was like the most beautiful woman I had ever seen in my life. She was Australian. She smelled amazing, and she was so beautiful. And I guess she was like a millionaire, because she was like, had this huge retreat in Malibu, California, that she was building this retreat center. And I was just like, picked her up, was driving her to the ayahuasca ceremony, and we were just bonding and connecting. And I was just like, oh my God, this woman is like so big and out of my league, but she's so beautiful. But it seems like we're kind of connecting, and that's kind of cool. But it was, I drove her up there, and I was very much taken back by this woman that I was bringing up to this ayahuasca retreat with me. The first night, I drank, and it was kind of mild. I felt like there was something that there was almost like something that put their hand on my shoulder. They're just saying, hey, this is what this is. And I felt that feeling. And then at one point I felt like this spirit come up to me and put its hand on my heart and just kind of scanned me. And then it went away. And that was it for the first night. The second night, was different. The second night, I really started hearing the voice of ayahuasca. It was like this voice, this guide started saying, okay, this is what this night is about, or this is what ayahuasca is. It's like, think of it as like a telephone that you can talk to anything and anyone in the universe. You can talk to aliens, and there was this whole section about aliens that you could talk to. You could talk to spirits, and there at one point there was like this spirit. I would almost think maybe it was my first interaction with the demon, but there was something that was like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. It was just like repeating it, like super annoying. And I said, no, I'm not going to look at you. And so I was able to say, nope, I hear something asking me to look at them, and it's not an energy that I feel like looking at. And I said no, and it went away and never messed with me again. It said you could talk to, animals, you can talk to people who have passed away, you can talk to your dad. And my dad had just passed away, and my dad came through, his energy came through, and me and my dad danced that night, and I was just in tears for the whole night. And we danced and just connecting with my dad and connecting with myself. And gosh, I was seeing things that night that was just I couldn't believe that this was real, that this was actually happening, that this was something experience that I could have on planet Earth. And I was just blown away that this was existing. I started getting hints about Ananya. I was being shown that me and her would be together. I was like, is this is this a hallucination? But pretty much I was getting this medicine was saying, so that girl that you brought up, that you're really into, you're going to be with her. She's building this retreat center in Malibu. At first you're going to start off making coffee or something small. And then in a month or so, you're going to be running the whole place. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And I'm probably just tripping right now, but that would be so cool. Because I didn't know what this is. This is what everybody experienced. I was having the biggest experience that I could possibly, it was impossible to put into words. It was so beautiful beyond words. And it was just, I was in tears the whole night, crying and crying and crying with joy and joy and joy, connecting the dots of my life and why things happened and why it brought me here. And then the third night started off kind of dark. I just left a Christian cult, and I was very scared about being taken advantage of again. And this was kind of seeming culty. Everybody was wearing white. We were using psychedelics. People were really into the guy who was the shaman. And I was like, oh my gosh, my mom is in a freaking cult, and where they're taking over my mind. I pulled a crystal out of my pocket, and the crystal, in the physical with my own eyes, I watched this worm thing grow out of the crystal. And then I put it back in my pocket, and I was scared, and I closed my eyes, and as I looked down, I could see these hands working on my heart. And I was like, oh my God, there's something touching me and digging into me. And then I could, even when I closed my eyes, I felt like I was being taken down this kind of the spaceship where the walls were alive. And I was like, oh my God, this is too much. I am kind of terrified. I feel like I'm in over my head. And I started going to a place of deep fear. And it got very cold. And I sat there and I thought about this Bible verse that said, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And I just kept repeating that and repeating that and repeating that. And then that night, as I repeated that, God came through for the first time. It was meeting God for the first time in my life. The God that I had been praying to my whole life. And I was having these amazing conversations with God. I was walking up on this mountain, many nights, many mornings and many nights. I would go on these walks on this mountain, and I would pray for hours, and I would talk to God like he was my friend. But I never heard God talk back. I would see amazing things happen, like getting jobs and, weird things like, becoming the right hand of the guy who was the founder of my cult. But I never really knew. I never heard God. I never met God. I never met him face to face like I did with this ayahuasca ceremony. And God came through. And we met for the first time, and I was bawling in tears, and he was the funniest person I've ever met in my life. He joked with me about everything from, visiting all the instances of my life and just being like, remember that, and just showing me things that I didn't notice. And I was just in tears, I cannot believe this is happening. I'm talking to God for real. Oh my gosh, how is this possible? And he pretty much said, hey, Keon, everything you ever did in your life was perfect because it brought you to this moment. It brought you right here, and we're here together. And so every choice you ever made was the right choice. And I was just like, oh my God, if that is the case, I could just forgive myself for everything, because I had a lot of shit that I was feeling guilty about and shameful about, from leaving the church to, wasting my life perhaps, on some religion that was not even real. And so to hear God say that to me was just like so shocking and so beautiful. And he said, hey, dude, we are gonna bring heaven to earth. That's what we're gonna do. And he said, but you know what? I need you just as much as you need me. And when he was saying me, he was not talking about me. He was talking about humanity, like God needing humans, like us. Like, this is a collaborative effort of bringing heaven to earth. And he said, I don't even know how this is going to go, which I just thought was so beautiful, because of my view of God. It's like, God is all-knowing. God is so high up. God doesn't even, who are you, human, to look, think, or question? No, this God was so humble and so beautiful and so, like almost even like allowing himself to be weak and not to know, and just say, hey man, I need you too. Like, we can't do this. I can't do this alone. And it was just like melting my heart over and over again that whole night, just with this conversation with God. And he showed me glimpses of heaven. He showed me what it was like so clearly, that it was like I felt like I was there and I wasn't going to come back. And there was moments where I experienced this peace that transcended understanding, and that's what the Bible talks about. The Bible talks about heaven is a peace that transcends understanding, and that I got to experience that night, this place of peace that was so peaceful that I could just be there for eternity. And when you think about eternity, it's like forever, no time, never stop, 1,000 years, billion years, million years, doesn't matter. And to think, when I used to ask people like, oh, what is heaven? What is it like? They'd say, oh, it's worshiping God forever. And I just thought that sounds so boring. But when I experienced this kind of worship of God, I was like, this is not boring. This is not boring at all. And I got to see just all it was like the gates to heaven. It was just the beginning, and it was but I could also see all the possibilities and understanding things that were just beyond words. And then at one point he brought me to this lever, and he was like, and he was like, okay, there's this lever, and I could feel like these angels around, and they were like, pull the lever, pull the lever, pull the lever, pull the lever. And I was like, oh shit. I mean, just from this place, it was like big. And I was like, oh my God, like, what does that even mean? What does it do? Like I felt like it was a really big deal. And I was like, I don't want to pull the lever. I don't know what that's going to do. And I felt God's like heart just like be like, yeah, good choice. So I didn't pull the lever. But I had this amazing, beautiful connection to God that night, and that changed everything for the rest of my life. I've never been the same. And it's kind of a normal thing now. Like, it's different. I don't need to have the big ayahuasca connection to God all the time. God's always there, and we dance all day, every day, and it's the most beautiful thing. But coming off of this ayahuasca ceremony, I'm like, oh my God, is this what everybody sees? Does this girl know that I'm supposed to be with her? Did she get the same message? She didn't seem like she got the same message. And that was kind of weird, because what am I supposed to do? She was this kind of millionairess who was beautiful, and guys were just pandering to her wherever she went. Every guy at this thing was just bowing to her. And I'm just like, this dude, like, working in a cubicle, and just living in my mom's basement at the time. I was like, no, this is she's way out of my league. But the medicine said, ayahuasca said, God said that I was gonna be with her. And so that was kind of a big deal. Like, I was kind of like, okay, well, we'll just see what happens there. I'm not gonna really push this, but I'm gonna be her friend, and we'll just see. And you know what? It's another story, but within, I think it was within 2 months, I was living up there in Malibu, in probably the most beautiful mansion of Malibu. It was at the very peak of Malibu. Like, in Malibu, California, there's Latigo Canyon, and it goes all the way up to the top, to the very peak. And then when you get to the peak, you go back down again. This house that I was living at by myself, and then with her, was at the very peak of Latigo Canyon, and it was this beautiful garden. It was filled with just every tree was planted with crystals. When you walk in, you could just feel this energy it was so powerful, and she created it. And within 3 months we were together, and we were in a relationship, and we were in love, and that's a whole other story in itself. Yeah, the messages you get from ayahuasca are real, and it is an introduction to the kind of thinking and beliefs that we need to have in order to get into. My friend's coming home, but yeah. So that's my story about ayahuasca, and this is my roommate Jason, who just got home.
Hey.
And yeah, thanks for listening to my video. And wow, it's 25 minutes, and